Good morning. Here I am in beautiful California, Davis, California, and I'll show you I'm wearing my InfoSec jacket from one of my wonderful jobs. I'm a consultant. I pretty much have a job with rotating logo from whatever company I happen to be consulting for at any given time. This is a great firm which I had information security for. It was one of the fourth largest websites. And those of you, it's actually not one of it, it's the fourth largest website. Um, yeah. So you'll be able to guess which company this is. I enjoyed working there. I loved some of the people, and then you'll see my partner shirt from Apple underneath it because I love my beautiful Apple hardware. Many things I like about Apple. The fascist political model I don't, but ironically, there's an old saying that me and some of my business fellows came up with, which is do business in a totalitarian country, don't live there. Well, I'll let you make your own decision. But today we're here to talk about something a little bit different. I'll take my jacket off. This is serious business here. Serious business. Alright, the jacket is coming off. Alright. I'm here to talk to you about a product with a very interesting name of Windows. Now this one's called Windows 10, and I'm only going to mention a couple of features today. The feature that I'm going to mention is multiple desktops. Shocker, you now have multiple desktops on Windows 10, which you've had in Linux since like the dawn of time. Yeah, X Windows, multiple terminal sessions, a multi-user kernel, all these things that basically are the core of a network operating system, or an operating system in general. And Windows came late to the game because it's about the PC era. Now, one of the things about the PC era a lot of people don't know is that without getting a chicken in every pot, there you go, that's a freaking one hell of a pot. A chicken in every pot, which was a slogan from a certain political entity of which I will not name, so you can look that up. And this was a PC on every desktop. That's one of the things that helped basically fuel or enable the internet revolution here in the United States and potentially everywhere. And so it brings us back to fascism a little bit. Microsoft is known for a lot of really tyrannical and abusive practices as a software vendor. Now, I worked at Microsoft as a consultant for 4 years out of my many-year career. I built their extranet with some friends of mine, a guy named Steve Steyerwalt. I don't know if it's okay to say his name, but I've now said it. Doug Day. Yeah, I'm remembering more people. Tamara Meyer. Josh has changed his name. He changed his last name. Josh Bond is his name now, but I know him as Josh Sackett. And this was during the internet boom in the 90s. So that was their first extranet. I worked on Windows 2000, which was the largest piece of code ever written at that point. Let's see, I was recognized by Bill Gates and the Secretary of Defense. And like a chopper. Get to the chopper. Yeah, a chopper landed. A Chinook CH-47 landed with the Secretary of Defense came out. And there was this big to-do, and they like kind of marched me out. And they're like, Gao from karate. They actually called me Gao karate. That's what I used to go by back then. He transitioned from military to civilian sector employment. It was like a big deal. But I'm not here to tell you about that. I'm here to tell you again about multiple desktops. That's basically all I'm here to tell you about today. So I'd like you to take a look at the screenshots below this. I'm trying to remember. I don't know how to drag a screenshot into YouTube, but I'll try to add this at the end. So I wanted to tell you about Microsoft. Are they coming late to the game? Are they coming early? Microsoft had a tablet basically 10 years before anybody else. They had handwriting recognition, that XP tablet PC, Windows PC, and that's why that comment about Steve Ballmer about the iPad, those comments were not really as unfounded as one might imagine based on the experience of Microsoft. Now, this talks to you a lot about style and taste and class and perception that Microsoft may or may not have. Now, well, some people don't understand this, but when I worked at Microsoft in the 90s, 1998, 99, this was the largest company in the world in terms of total market capitalization. It was about 450, 465 billion at one point. And people go, oh, Apple's worth almost $1 trillion now. Yes, but in adjusted dollars, and because dollars lose value over time, so more dollars are needed to make up the same amount of money. Microsoft would still be 1.5 times the size of Apple today. Not only would they only be 1.5 times the size of Apple, there was no one below them for a long way. They were like 10 times the size of any other software company. So there's a line I always give my students, which is basically, it's from The Dark Knight, a movie you may not have seen. And it's from a character maybe you might recognize. And there's a line he delivers, which goes like this.
Victory has defeated you. Peace has cost you your strength.
That's essentially what happened to Microsoft. Is Victory defeated them. They had just decimated all of their competition. How and why they've done it is a really interesting question. Because I've never actually known someone who said, yeah, I got a new system. I chose Windows because of A, B, or C, or 1, 2, or 3, or as someone of my mentors says, A, B, or 3, 1, 2, and C. She loves doing that. But anyway, it's an interesting question. So now that choice is available, we're going to see what people really, really choose. But I think some of the best parts about that is multi-platform is a good thing. Being in security, one of the things I like is multi-platform. Even though it increases my footprint and my exposure, it also makes me more resilient against infections. So, for example, if an alien species that actually cared about people were to invade this planet, and they actually had to take over, they would have to fight house to house through every freaking annoying nation on the country in the world. So it makes it much more difficult to take over. If everyone's running the same operating system and you find a vulnerability, you just basically taken over the entire environment. Okay? So people don't talk about this very much. So you have the risk of more vulnerabilities, right? More exposure. You have a greater footprint, but you also have the reward of one virus, one infection, one threat is not going to exploit your entire environment. So these are things I want you to think about, and things that I think about, and those of us in security think about, is basically how to keep you and your information safe while you go out there into the internet world and do the things you want. A lot of us are basically, the internet is basically a very similar to, you can think of the early toxic soup they call of the ammonia, amino acid, nitrogen, whatever, gases of the early formation of the planet. And basically we haven't built immune systems yet. So we're going out, yeah, on the internet, getting eaten, dead, all kinds of things. So the internet is the internet and the virtual world is built, we're building an immune system into it. And this is generally how I think of security. The question I ask is, why didn't you stop that virus? The question is why did your computer invite someone in to hang out and start, rooting through your stuff? Would you do that? No. Would your kid do that? No, there's a lot of things you wouldn't, but children kind of would. I don't know if you've ever had children, those of you who are old enough to have children, or who have children, or have adopted them. Or do you remember being a child? Now, me, I remember being a child because it was about, like 15 minutes ago. Like, yeah, I was still a kid. Maybe yesterday, maybe tomorrow I'm still a kid. Yeah, I have a very youthful attitude. And so I remember exactly what it's like to be a teenager because I feel like a teenager half the times. I feel like I'm in this world, or maybe younger, and people just run their mouth and it doesn't make any sense, and I can't figure it out. And I have to ask them over and over, and then they tell me some kind of nonsense, which isn't what they really mean. Like what, dude? Like what happens at some point between childhood and adulthood that isn't supposed to happen? Like all that, I'm going to say it bluntly, for those of you on corporate networks, I think this might be acceptable. But what kind of bullshit is that? I used to tell my students, one of the things I would share with them is that when you're in a world where someone says to you, oh, you can't just tell the truth, that's how you know you're living in a dark age. Because the norm is to tell the truth. That is the norm. It's always been the norm. Because people who don't tell the truth in a tribal society get beat to death or exiled, or both, exiled and then beat to death. Which, primates can be kind of violent, but it gets the job done. It is what it is. And so that's kind of the internet. It's full from that savagery. And in fact, all of the material reality, anywhere you can measure, every single niche is fought over to the death. I can't think of any one that's not. And this is my complete anecdotal armchair science. I love it. My friend used to say from New York, man, from upstate New York, he said, beware of the guy who has all the answers. I'm not sure who that guy is, but you might want to watch out for him because it's just really easy. They call it populism, which is a popular thing. Yeah, I did say that. It's a popular thing going on in Europe right now. You have some of the nationalism parties because, the West has a falling birth rate. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I don't want to go too far out on a limb on this one. I just want to post this, and talk about Windows 10 and the spread of the multiple desktops, which I've been looking for a long time. Now, would that bring me back to Windows? My company, Virtual Nexus, is a Microsoft and Apple partner. I have, Windows installed on VMs. I use Microsoft infrastructure a lot of times. I don't anymore. I try to avoid it because of licensing costs. I find them to be prohibitive, stultifying, rigid, evil. I don't want to say evil, but yeah. I mean, this example is probably important, and I want to tell this last bit of story here. And that is about 2 years ago. I was building a virtual desktop environment, you know, for a client, or I was building one for my clients to sell, a service offering as they call it in consulting. Basically, it's a service you can apply to multiple clients and you can customize it for the clients. Okay. And I looked up the Microsoft licensing, and you had to pay more per license. Okay, so if you had a virtual desktop that a user owned, and then you had a corporate desktop where you basically copied it to a hard drive and were able to push it, like you could just see the window. This is getting way out. I'm actually going to stop. The important thing is that I realized Microsoft raised their licensing costs, and my product's costs raised. So if you actually think of demand curve, okay, and the supply curve, is they actually made less available at every price of my service. So I realized that I worked for Microsoft. I didn't work for me. My company wasn't mine. It was theirs. Now, I've made a lot of money off Microsoft and Microsoft products over the years, for which I'm grateful. But never as much money have I made off Microsoft as Microsoft has made off of me. Open source is the way to go. Okay? And I didn't understand a lot of this from the beginning. I understood the logic, power to the people, free the oppressed. I was completely on board. I went to Berkeley. Shit, I was such a rebel, I dropped out of Berkeley and joined the Army. Yeah, there's another story. Nonetheless, your information cannot be owned by someone else. This is a really bad idea. Everyone's really big on the cloud. I'm using everyone a lot, so there's a lot of very extremely poor anecdotal sample sizes in this conversation. Be aware. Anecdotal alert. Bad science. Okay? Poor scientific reasoning. Okay, my reasoning's rock solid. You might know I'm quite eloquent and relatively intelligent. That doesn't make it science. So again, themes: Windows 10, multiple desktops, freedom of information, not giving your information for free. So the cloud, for example, I migrated people into Google, Gmail, Google Apps years ago. And what I discovered is migrating them in is really easy. Getting them out is hard. Okay? So I migrated all their mail into their servers. You had it on all their desktops. But getting it out, nightmare. It was a nightmare. You couldn't get them out. So I always recommend a multi-platform strategy. Okay, where you have Amazon, maybe Rackspace, and maybe your own private cloud. So you have 3 cloud vendors that keeps them fighting for each other. Okay, so that keeps the competition good, keeps the service as well, and raises society. In a simple way, my parents came from India. They would never go to the same gas station. They always spread their gas around to multiple gas stations. Um, it's very interesting, okay? And this is stuff they brought with them from India. I don't know if it's a class thing, from where they're from, or it's a noblesse oblige. But these are some of the things I've learned. Now, this is the first vlog post I've done in a long time. Now, I'm going to watch this. You may never see this vlog post. And if you don't, light a fire, burn a candle for the blog post you never seen. You never seen, and I said blog, excuse me, for the vlog that you've not had the privilege to view. Because you view a vlog variously, vacuously. I'm not V for Vendetta, but I'll tell you what. That scene in the beginning where he gives his first monologue is something else. Freedom, liberty, choice. And paying Virtual Nexus to do lots of consulting. Shameless plug.